Look, I have been spending a ton of time analyzing the current cinematic landscape, really tracking the subtle shifts and those massive tectonic movements happening behind the scenes. And I can tell you right now, with absolute certainty, we are standing on the precipice of an unprecedented, massive cinematic shift coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Seriously, if you just look at the current trajectory of Phase 5 and Phase 6, the multiverse saga is desperately searching for a monumental anchor point, right? It needs something to ground this massive, sprawling narrative. So what I'm about to break down for you is a comprehensive, deep dive explainer of the impending post-credit scene for Spider-Man Brand New Day. And let me be clear, this isn't just another throwaway teaser meant to get a quick gasp in the theater. No way. This is the fulcrum upon which the entire future of the MCU balances. Marvel is meticulously laying the groundwork here for an event that will completely rewrite the rules of their universe. When you start hearing industry insiders and deep-level sources internally describing a sequence with this exact phrase, one of the biggest MCU post-credit scenes ever, you really have to pause and take a step back. You have to deeply understand the sheer gravity of a statement like that. We are talking about a cinematic moment designed from the ground up to rival the absolute most iconic stingers in franchise history. Think back for a second to that legendary Nick Fury Avengers Initiative introduction, which fundamentally promised us a wider, interconnected universe. Or think about that first chilling smile from Thanos at the very end of the original Avengers, which promised this inevitable, looming cosmic doom. For an upcoming sequence to carry this specific label, it absolutely has to deliver on both fronts. It has to expand the universe while simultaneously introducing an undeniable, terrifying new reality. I've been piecing together this narrative trajectory, and guys, Marvel is not planning a simple, fun character cameo here. They are planning a universe-altering detonation. But okay, before we can look at the massive cosmic future, we really have to ground ourselves in the deeply heartbreaking present. Let's establish Peter Parker's current incredibly tragic status post No Way Home. The sheer emotional weight of his situation is staggering. To truly understand the impact of what's coming, we have to revisit that final coffee shop scene. You remember it, right? The bell rings on the door, Peter walks in holding that pre-written speech on a piece of paper, and he sees the band-aid on MJ's forehead. A direct result of the chaos he brought into her life. And in that one defining moment, he makes the impossible choice to just fold the paper, put it in his pocket, and walk back out into the snow. Because of Doctor Strange's final, desperate spell, Peter Parker has experienced an absolute, irreversible erasure from the world's memory. The Avengers don't know him. MJ doesn't know him. Ned doesn't know him. He is literally a ghost walking among the living, bearing the crushing weight of a world that doesn't even know his true name. Let me explain the sheer terrifying depth of this isolation, because it's wild. It's not just that his friends have forgotten his face. His entire historical footprint has been wiped completely clean from the face of the earth. There are no high school records anymore. There are no Stark internship files. He has no social security number, no bank account, no medical history, and absolutely zero safety nets. We are watching a young man forced to rebuild his entire existence from absolute ground zero in what is basically a bureaucratic and social nightmare. He is experiencing a total systemic erasure. The psychological toll of walking past the people you love most, knowing they look right through you as a complete stranger, that is a level of pain that is fundamentally and permanently reshaping exactly who Peter Parker is at his absolute core. This profound, inescapable loneliness is the emotional bedrock of everything we were about to break down today. Before the next massive Avengers-level event even kicks off, Peter is entirely isolated. He is physically and emotionally damaged, and he is deeply vulnerable. Just consider his physical environment right now. He's living in a freezing, dingy little apartment, hand-sewing his own fabric suit, and literally listening to a police scanner just to find some kind of purpose. He has lost his mentor in Tony Stark, his moral compass in Aunt May, his best friend, and the love of his life. Marvel has meticulously, piece by piece, stripped away every single piece of armor Peter ever had, leaving his soul completely exposed to whatever darkness is waiting for him in the shadows. Which naturally leads us to the ultimate question. What actually comes after losing everything? When a hero is pushed to the absolute razor-thin edge of their sanity and their physical endurance, how do they bounce back? Or rather, who steps out of those shadows to meet them at their absolute lowest point? This brings us perfectly to the first major theory I've been tracking regarding this explosive finale, and exactly how it connects to the wider, collapsing multiverse. Theory 1. The Multiverse of MJ. Okay, so this theory introduces the monumental return of an alternate universe Captain America, specifically the return of Chris Evans as a multiversal variant of Steve Rogers. Now, I know this sounds like a massive, unbelievable leap at first, but let me break down the precise lore-based mechanics at play here. It all hinges on something called the Earth 616 spell exception. Remember, Doctor Strange cast that final memory-wiping spell to save their immediate reality from a multiversal incursion. He explicitly said everyone in the world will forget you. However, the prevailing deep lore theory here is that this spell strictly affected the main Earth 616 timeline. That means across the vast, infinite branches of the multiverse, or in places existing entirely outside of time like the Void, there are still alternate universes that remain entirely untouched by that localized magic. So an alternate Steve Rogers, maybe one facing an imminent Doctor Doom multiversal collapse, might actually still remember exactly who Peter Parker is, bypassing Strange's spell entirely. Just paint this vivid, cinematic picture in your mind for a second. The movie is ending. Peter is sitting completely alone on a rainy New York rooftop, or maybe he's collapsed in his cramped apartment. He's completely exhausted, physically beaten down, perhaps bleeding out from a brutal, uncompromising street-level fight. He has absolutely nothing left to give the world. And suddenly, the air crackles. A golden portal opens, or a figure just steps out of the shadows. It's Steve Rogers. Think back to their very first interaction in Civil War. Where are you from, kid? Queens. Brooklyn. Steve looks at Peter, calls him by his actual, forgotten name, and tells him that the multiverse is collapsing, and they desperately need Spider-Man's help to save reality itself. For a broken, isolated hero, it would be the ultimate, mind-blowing heroic rescue. But, we have to rigorously challenge our own theories here. We really have to ask, does a massive, heroic, multiversal rescue actually fit a deeply tragic ending? My analysis of the underlying tone of this upcoming movie suggests it's going to be incredibly dark, super gritty, and heavily grounded. We are talking about a narrative heavily rumored to feature Mayor Kingpin relentlessly hunting down street-level vigilantes, potentially even bringing Daredevil into the fray. If the tone is that grounded, that emotional, and that violently tragic, having a grand, glowing, Avenger-style multiversal rescue mission suddenly drop into the post-credits might cause some severe tonal whiplash. Jumping straight from a bloody street fight against mob enforcers right back into cosmic, reality-breaking chaos, actually, scratch that. It might feel like an artificial interruption rather than a truly earned conclusion.
So let's move on to Theory 2. The Dark Bond.
This brings us to a far more sinister narrative thread, one that I believe perfectly, seamlessly aligns with a deeply emotional and tragic storyline. I am talking, of course, about the return of the symbiote. Remember the very end of No Way Home? Eddie Brock vanished back to his native universe, but a tiny, pulsating piece of that alien symbiote was left behind on a bar counter, right here in the main MCU. But we have to understand how this creature operates differently from standard run-of-the-mill villains. The symbiote bond isn't just about getting a cool black suit that makes you punch a little harder. No, it is an intelligent, highly parasitic alien connection. It actively seeks out a host's deepest, unhealed pain, their simmering suppressed anger, and their absolute, crushing loneliness. It literally feeds on that darkness. It doesn't just want a host. It wants a victim whose emotional barriers are entirely shattered. And right now, in the entire universe, there is absolutely no one more mentally and emotionally broken, hopeless, and isolated than Peter Parker. He is the ultimate perfect prey for this organism.
And honestly, this is exactly why right now is the perfect time for the iconic black suit storyline. We have been waiting years to see the MCU properly tackle the dark, corrupting influence of the symbiote. If we look back at the original 1984 Secret Wars comic origins, the suit acts as a toxic coping mechanism. Introducing it exactly when Peter's emotional defenses are completely destroyed is just a masterstroke of storytelling. The symbiote wouldn't just be a weapon for him, it would be a false friend. It would be a metaphorical addiction that numbs his unbearable pain, while slowly and meticulously corrupting his morals, setting up a phenomenally dark, introspective cinematic future for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. However, playing devil's advocate is crucial here. As incredibly exciting as the Black Suit saga is, we have to ask, is a simple symbiotic tease truly universe-changing? Is just showing a tiny blob of black alien goo creeping up a brick wall toward Peter's apartment window enough to genuinely, objectively be labeled the biggest MCU post-credit scene ever? I mean, it's undeniably huge for the Spider-Man mythos for sure, but for the entire cinematic universe as a whole, probably not enough to rival the Avengers Initiative. Which creates the perfect, logical bridge to our third and arguably most explosive universe-altering possibility. Theory 3. Enter the X-Men. What if Marvel is using this exact vulnerable moment of isolation to officially and permanently bridge Spider-Man's grounded, lonely world with the sudden, seismic arrival of the mutants? I've been tracking some massive, widespread speculation regarding the new casting for this film, particularly the intense rumors surrounding Sadie Sink joining the franchise. There is immense chatter out there that her potential role could be directly mutant-related, possibly acting as a young Jean Grey or another pivotal, immensely powerful mutant character, operating entirely in secret. Just imagine Peter, operating purely at the gritty street level, struggling to survive, and suddenly encountering a telepathic force or a mutant power he has absolutely no context for. A telepath like Jean Grey could actually peer into his mind, seeing right past the magic spell to the immense trauma underneath. A direct, undeniable mutant encounter right in the dark heart of New York City that changes the entire fabric of his world.
Seriously, consider the historic scale this collision represents. Marvel desperately needs to generate astronomical, completely unprecedented hype as we march down this long road towards Secret Wars. They absolutely need to organically integrate the X-Men into the main timeline. Having Peter's highly grounded, isolated world suddenly and violently collide with the official, undeniable arrival of the X-Men would instantly shatter the internet. Spider-Man is the heart of the Marvel Universe, placing him as the focal point, the very first major Earth 616 hero to discover the mutants hiding in the shadows, elevates a solo street-level story into a massive, foundational cornerstone event for the entire franchise's future. But how exactly do we bridge the gritty streets with the cosmos, or in this specific case, the mutants? It all comes down to the cinematic execution of narrative contrast. It is incredibly brilliant to have a movie entirely focused on gritty street-level crime. Think about the pacing for a second. Spending 2 whole hours watching Peter stopping muggings, dealing with mob bosses, fighting with brass knuckles for his own daily survival in a harsh, unforgiving city. And then, in the final 5 seconds, ripping that grounded reality wide open with a reality-breaking mutant or multiversal revelation. The absolute shock value of that sudden, massive escalation makes the transition incredibly visceral and powerful for the audience.
Let's look at the bigger picture for a moment. The evolution of Peter Parker and his cinematic journey.
To truly appreciate why any of these massive theories work so well, we have to deeply analyze the overarching character arc. Marvel isn't just torturing this character for the sake of drama. They are intentionally burning Spider-Man down to the absolute ground in order to forge him. Think about where he started. A protected, wide-eyed kid completely under Tony Stark's massive umbrella, equipped with billion-dollar Stark tech, orbital drone strikes, and literally having the Avengers on speed dial. But over time, that incredible safety net was systematically and violently ripped away, leading directly into his current era as an isolated, severely damaged vigilante operating in the shadows. Ultimately, this brutal crucible is meticulously designed to forge him into the independent, purely comic-accurate hero we've always wanted. A hero who relies solely on his own scientific genius, his own physical grit, and his own unwavering moral compass. So, what's the ultimate conclusion after thoroughly analyzing all these narrative threats? Well, I believe we are going to see a masterful blend of darkness and the future. Marvel has a really distinct habit of combining multiple narrative seeds for maximum impact. I can genuinely see a highly visceral scenario where they weave these elements together seamlessly. Picture this, a deeply emotional, tragic scene where the black symbiote goo finally slithers up Peter's arm, finding him in his darkest, most painful hour. But just as that toxic bond begins to numb his pain, the moment is suddenly interrupted by a massive, unavoidable mutant revelation or a multiversal portal fracturing the sky right above him. It perfectly delivers the intimate, personal tragedy of the black suit alongside the universe-scale hype of the next saga simultaneously. Ultimately, if executed correctly, Brand New Day is shaping up to be, without question, the absolute darkest Spider-Man movie ever put to film. It will utterly and completely destroy whatever microscopic remaining illusions of safety Peter Parker has left. This uncompromising storyline promises to give us Tom Holland's most brutal, emotionally gripping, and raw performance of his entire career. We are going to witness a true cinematic trial by fire, breaking down the boy to forge the man.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to deeply ponder. What really breaks a man who has already lost absolutely everything? When you have hit absolute rock bottom, when your very existence has been erased from the world, does the universe finally offer you a hand up, or does it send something far darker to test your fractured soul one last time? The cinematic board is perfectly set, all the pieces are in position, and this impending post-credit move is going to change the entire landscape forever.